So today we're going to take a step into frequency separation, and I'm going to show you a few ways on how to do it, and I'm going to show you the ideal way I do it. And not saying that my way is the best and only way. I just feel that this method is more, you have more control of the image instead of getting it'll restrain you from getting carried away while you're editing the image, and it'll somewhat avoid you from making the model look fake, and we don't really want to get that as an end result. So let's get started here. So I pretty much, on this layer right here, I pretty much did up all the healing and removing the small blemishes and whatnot. So for all those who don't know what frequency separation is, the idea of frequency separation is to isolate the skin texture from the skin tones. So texture would be considered, if we zoom in here, you can see pores and little hairs and stuff. That would be considered texture. Now you can see, and let's use a blank layer for example, and let's use white to pinpoint what we need to pinpoint. Let's use a rather hard brush, and let's show the problem spots. So as we look here, you can see in this area it's a little red, and then this area gets a little lighter. So that appears to be a color issue. So, and this area appears to be a little bit more lighter if you really look at it. So let's get rid of that. So as I said before, you see the textures, the hair strands, and the pores. That's considered texture. And when we have color shifts like here, that will be considered color. So the idea of frequency separation is to separate the two and allow you to basically remove the texture temporarily and fix the color issues, and then place the texture back so you can preserve the reality of the image. So there's a few ways to do this, like I said, and it's not the ideal way. My way is not the only way. I'm pretty sure there are other photographers online that do the same thing or differently, but it's all to achieve the same goal at the end of the day. So some of the problem spots we can spot here are this transition right here. Let's not do that. Let's open up another sample layer. Let's get here. So this transition right here, let's get a thinner brush. So this transition right here, as you can see right here, there's a dark spot and then it goes back light. So the idea of frequency separation is to blend that so the transition can be smooth, so you don't really see anything too harsh. Right here we have another one, and this mostly happens when you're doing like beauty images without a key light coming in from here and without a key light coming in from here. So if you're doing a straight on beauty image, most of the light is coming in this area. So that's how she has this spotlight on her forehead, and it also spills down here on the nose. And I was not using a reflector, so that's why under here is a little bit dark, but I actually wanted the image to come out that way. That's why I refrained from using a reflector. So when you shoot a straight on beauty shot using a beauty dish, these are the areas that pretty much become illuminated. So we get the nose, and we have up here as well. So those are the areas. If you use a key light coming in from this area and also this area, these areas of the face right here will also become illuminated. But because I want that shadow contour on both sides, I refrained from doing so and allowed the beauty dish to just come straight here on the forehead. So you can, as we zoom in, we can see the catch light in her eyes from the beauty dish itself. So all these are little spots that can show you how your image is going to come out towards the end of your shoot. So let's get started into the nitty-gritty. I'm done talking. So to set up my layers, I would make 3 layers. So let's make two. So let's this first layer right here, let's not focus on that because that's my healing layer. So I just, remove the blemishes and stuff like that. So starting with this layer, we make two layers. So you can name this layer blur, and you can name this layer texture. So we're going to blur this image using the Gaussian blur. And the idea is a lot of photographers don't get this right. This appears to be the problem at times. I mostly focus on the eye. So I use a radius that kind of blurs the eye out to the point where you can see the features of the face, but this texture is not there. It's gone. But you can still make out that this is an eye, this is a pupil, these are lashes, and this is her eyebrow and whatnot. So a radius of 7.6 is what we're gonna go for. And let's place the texture layer back on. So as I just did, I turned the texture layer off temporarily so we can blur this layer right here. And now let's turn the texture layer back on. So we go to apply image, blur, and we set the blend mode to subtract. So now, and make sure the offset is 128 and the scale number is 2. Keep that in mind. That has to be at the same all times. I'm currently working with an 8-bit image. Usually when you have a 16-bit image, you have to change the settings a bit, but I've edited 16-bit images before, and I've edited 8-bit images before. Personally, 16-bit is said to contain or retain more data, but I personally feel 8-bit is not too much of a difference because 16-bit, it slows your workflow. That's one. So if I was using a 16-bit image and recording this video, it will be super slow. But I use 8-bit because it's really like almost like a 7% difference in quality, and it slows your workflow down when you use a 16-bit. But I personally think if you're using 16-bit, it depends on what you're shooting. If you're shooting like landscape photography, nature, and you have a lot of colors in your image and you want it to pop and retain the detail, I would suggest you use 16-bit images. But if you're doing regular beauty editorial shots and stuff, 8-bit is fine in my opinion. So as I've said, we set this layer to blur, set the blending mode to subtract, and make sure the scale and offset, the scale is 2 and the offset is 128. So as we have, and don't forget, now we have this high pass filter looking kind of thing going on. So basically everything you see here, this is basically an exaggeration of all the textures. So you see how the hairs in the eyebrow came out, and the lashes and the eye and whatnot. This is just texture only. So we set this blend mode to linear light, and as you see, nothing happened. So the difference between the bottom layer and the top and the texture layer, it's exactly the same as this original layer right here. That's because now the texture is on one layer and the colors are on the bottom layer. So now we're gonna make a separate layer in between these two. So let's do that. So now we have a layer that's separating the color and the texture. So let's remove the texture for a while. Matter of fact, let's keep it there and delete this layer. A lot of photographers, well, let me not say a lot of photographers, because I used to use this method as well. So I would take a lasso tool, basically, circle the portion of the skin in which I want to blur or even out, and then I would, as my selection is there, I would go to blur, Gaussian blur, and then blur it to my desired, wherever I think it feels blended. I personally don't like this method because you have to set your feathering to a proper amount. But as you can see, as you move the radius up, it just blends more and more. And of course, you're not going to blend this far to the point where everything is distorted and whatnot. So if this is at 0 and this is blended, as you move it forward, this is where we're going. I personally don't like this method because over time, if you if you, let's say you circle this whole area right here, you see how I missed and I got a little bit of the brow. If I was to blur that now, let's see that, and move this up, it kind of distorts the image right here. So now you have light parts and then a dark shade here. Now you have to make this side the same tone as that, so the image doesn't look, you know, out of order and whatnot. So I personally don't like this lasso blurring thing going on and whatnot. I used to use it personally, but this method that I'm going to show you is part of my current workflow, and I find you have way more control over the image. So let's deselect that, and when you make a selection like this in Photoshop, to deselect it, instead of right clicking and pressing deselect, you can just press Command D on a Mac. I love shortcuts. So let's go back and remake that blank layer in between the two. And now we're gonna turn off the texture layer temporarily. So now all that we're seeing right here is no texture. This is basically only color information only. So with that being said, as we said before, we look at the problem spot. There's a weak transition here, there's a weak transition here, there's a strong contrast right here, and another strong contrast right here, and right here. So let's delete these selections. Always, before you do any image, always, you know, have a checklist like, hey, I'm gonna need a fix right here, I'm gonna need to do the eyes, I'm gonna need to blend this properly, fix the nose a bit, fix the lips, because some photographers get carried away. They like to, you know, look at the before and after image and say, oh, hey, I didn't do a dramatic effect, so I didn't really edit the picture as good. Becoming a professional photographer, over time you realize that less is more, because the more you change the image, the more the person doesn't look like themselves, and the more, you know, if we're doing beauty photography, we're trying to retain all the details that were in the raw image, and we're trying to make the model look like herself. We're also trying to make the model just look like the best version of herself. So we're not really here to transform. Photoshop is an enhancing software, in my opinion. I don't think it should be used to, you know, transform and make people look different. Of course, that's cool if the client requests that, you know, you have to do what you need to do, but personally, I think I like to do subtle changes, because they just preserve all the details. And who wants to look like, you know, plastic or silicone or porcelain and and stuff like that? You know, we don't really need that. So my idea is, I'm going to personally brush in these transitions and move them away with the texture layer off. So that how that works is, I take my brush and I make sure my flow is at 2. So you can press Shift 02 and it'll go to 2. Right. Now we're gonna use a soft brush, totally soft. So now I'm just gonna select areas and just blend the skin. So let's get started. So I'm gonna just select here and color in. And go online, guys, and, you know, check out makeup tutorial videos. This is basically how makeup artists apply makeup to their models or their clients and whatnot. This is basically the basis of how it goes. So as you can see, I'm just brushing in transitions, making them smoother, keeping the light where it belongs. If you know the middle section of her forehead is supposed to be a highlight, retain that. Do not blow it out. Do not flatten it to the point where the image doesn't look, you know, up to par. Frequency is a very strong tool, and some photographers get carried away and they end up destroying the image instead of actually enhancing it. You know, sometimes, you know, you edit an image so much, you look at the raw file and you're like, wow, the raw file kind of looks better than the edit because I took it too far, you know. So it's all about doing things in moderation and whatnot. So let's turn the texture layer back on for a quick second, and let's toggle this on and off. So as you can see, I just really smoothed out those transitions. Like it blended pretty well in my opinion. The light is even, the skin colors are even. This is great. So we're gonna continue. So let's turn the texture layer back off. So I see a transition right here that I want to make lighter. So you just select a lighter color or a relative color. I wouldn't say a lighter color. Just select a relative color that's in the area. And let's do this. Right. And let's do the same over here. So now it doesn't look like, now under the eye looks pretty blended and whatnot. And another thing, I used to do frequency separation on the whole face, and I realized afterwards I was done, it looks like blurred out too much and it looks too puppet looking and doll face looking. We want that look, but we don't, because, you know, ideally everyone has skin texture, everybody has pores, so you're never gonna meet someone that has skin like a Barbie doll, because Barbie dolls don't have any pores. They're just plastic. And you don't want that. You always want skin texture in the model. That's what preserves the realness of the photo. Alrighty, so we're gonna keep this up for a little bit longer. Okay, we're back. So let's toggle back on this texture layer. And as you can see, this is a major improvement in skin blending. As you can see, major improvement. So let's toggle on and off what we've done. So that's perfect. I like that a lot. You can see the shadows are blended, the highlights are blended. And so we toggle that on and off. That looks great. Of course, for demonstration purposes, I would do this a little bit more tedious when I'm retouching, but for purposes of this video, I was just giving a general idea of the process that undergoes in frequency separation. So this is pretty cool. I like this. This is good. So this is a great transition, and frequency separation is powerful. Like, and so after we're done, we're gonna just group these layers. So to group these layers like this, you press Command and you click on the amount of layers you want, and to deselect, you still hold Command and to click again, and press Command G to put this in a group. And we can just name this FS for frequency separation. So that's a group, so you don't have 3 layers. So let's say you get confused with this layer, you try to do healing on this, but this was your frequency separation layer, and now you're healing and stuff, the calculations are incorrect, and you're going to basically distort the image. So that's basically frequency separation right there, as you have it and whatnot. So I feel this is a powerful tool. We get results pretty quickly, and I'm pretty sure, like I said before, there are probably a million other ways to do this and to get this done professionally, but this is still a professional approach. I've used it many times. I have knowledge of other ways of frequency separation. I just personally think this way, when you can manually paint in where you want the transitions to blend, instead of just taking a lasso tool right here and hoping this area will be blended. But sometimes your focus is just like, your focus will be just this area, but if you make a big circle like this, you're gonna end up you know, messing up this area or this area when you know that was already blended, you know. So as I was saying before, I don't do frequency separation on the entire face, because after a while it just looks fake. So just as we see before, we just have subtle transitions that needed to be blended under the eye, over here in this temple area over here under the chin, and pretty much everything of that sort. So I try not to go overboard and start blending things that don't need to be blended. As you can see, I didn't really do too much under the neck, because the light was pretty even under there and the transitions were pretty solid, so I didn't really touch in that area. So of course, this image, you know, we're not done here. We probably gonna go into, you know, dodging burning, and, you know, fixing the highlights in the hair, and, you know, probably cropping it right, fixing the eyes and the catch light, and the, you know, but this is frequency separation basically explained. So thank you guys for watching. If you're new to my page, please subscribe. Once again, you can find me on Instagram at mister.paparazzi, and you can find me online at mrpaparazzi.com. So give a thumbs up if this helped. I take all questions seriously. I answer them promptly. If you need more information, you can just hit me up via my website or Instagram. You can also follow me on Facebook at MISTER Paparazzi. I have a business page where we do photo retouching courses and go more in depth, you know, outside of YouTube. But as for now, I'm pretty sure this helped someone, you know, in their retouching workflow. If you need sample images to practice on, you can also reach out for that as well. So going back to the image real fast before we close, as we made this frequency separation stack here, I know a lot of you guys are like, oh, I don't really know how to make 3 layers. I don't want to do that. Let's say I get 5 pictures to edit. Do I really have to do that every time? You really don't. Photoshop has something called actions, and if you go to the actions panel in the window, you go to window and you press actions, and it'll come up. So as the actions come up, you can create a new action. So you basically record all the steps that you do. So next time, let's say we open up another image like this in Photoshop, we'll be able to do this action stack right here so quickly, because it'll just be at the press of a button. So this whole stack would just be made by clicking run the action, and then it'll make the layers for you with the proper values and calculations, and all you have to do is just go in, remove the texture layer for a little bit, and go in and start coloring and fixing the transitions. So also I have, you know, links to actions, Photoshop actions for, you know, frequency separation, dodge and burning, sharpening, you know, color corrections for hair, all kind of stuff like that. But once again, if you're new to my page, please subscribe, like, give a thumbs up if this video helped. All questions will be answered promptly. Thank you guys once again.